Okay, so good morning everybody and welcome back from your coffee break. I know it was probably lots to talk about, lots of energy going on in the coffee break room, but we haven't finished. We've still got some more to talk about and we've still got a lot of things to discuss. So welcome back and welcome to the round table. My name's Carolyn Brand and I'm from Prospects based here in Brussels, and we work together with EFSA in supporting events just like this Scientific Colloquium. And I'm privileged and happy to be here as the moderator for this round table. Now, as you can see, I'm just going to step down here so you can see everybody. I'm joined on the stage by an amazing set of people. Why are they amazing? Because they are all experts and leaders in their own field. But the great thing is, of all the people we have here, we have underpinning the theme of this overall colloquium is diversity of stakeholders. We have representatives from industry, from research, and from academia. So that is great, and I'd like to welcome them all, so you can give them a round of applause for being here. Thank you. Thank you all, and I am going to, there's your names, all up there. I was going to introduce you. So we have Ramiro Alberio from University of Nottingham. So if you I think you know everybody, but I'm going to go through the names as well. Then we have Jette Young from Aarhus University over there. We have Andrea Gemeni from EFSA. We have Javier Moreno from CSIC here. Then we have Valeria Toloni from Industry, Cellular Agriculture in Europe. And we have Kevin Verstrepen from KU Leuven. And last but not least, I'm going to get this right, Agnieszka Wegstein. Have I got it? Yes, from Europe Bio. So those are the panelists we have today. And what we're going to do is we've got some predefined questions that we've actually already gathered from some of the participants. So I'm going to start with those, but then we are going to open up to the audience. And this is where you then need to take part as well, because what we would like is lots of questions from the audience. Round table, it's only successful if it's very interactive. How we'd like to do it, like we did before, is somebody will come around with the microphone. You can answer you tell us who you are, what your question is. If it's a general question, just mention it's a general question. But if you've got a question that you want to direct to a specific member of the panel or even panelists, then please say who the question is for, and then we'll go forward like that. So there's plenty of time. I think we've got 1.5 hours for this roundtable, so there's going to be a lot of time to discuss many subjects. Some of them will be repeating some of the discussions that you've already had throughout the morning and from yesterday. However, before we start, I want to share what the overriding question that is actually driving this roundtable. What are all the questions going to be underpinning? And that question is how to ensure that risk assessment methodologies and expertise keeps abreast of the technical developments in the area of novel foods, specifically regarding the safety of cell-culture-derived foods. That's a big question, right? It's what you've been discussing all day yesterday. But I am not a scientist. Until I started working on this activity with EFSA, I didn't even know what cell-derived meat was. I thought, maybe it's a trend. But after listening to everybody yesterday and just that little bit of knowledge I gathered, I realized it's not a trend, it's a necessity. It's something we do need. And I think one of the earlier speakers yesterday from WHO, Moez Sana, said, if we don't have novel food and cell-based food and food ingredients, we have the risk of not having enough conventional food to feed the population. Because as Helen mentioned yesterday in her opening talk, our consumption behavior has changed. We eat a lot more than our ancestors. It's fast food, it's easy food, and we consume a lot more. And there's so many different driving factors that need to be addressed. The challenges are immense, which is what you all spoke about yesterday. But last night, as I was walking back through the rain to my hotel in Brussels, there was one thing that kept coming back in my mind, one word: collaboration. That was my big takeaway from yesterday, was all the behaviors here in the main plenary, in the breakout rooms, in the wrap-up, was collaboration. But collaboration with all the stakeholders, with the industry, with the research, with academia. And to address these driving factors and these immense challenges, that collaboration, when you continue it and actually enhance it, is a benefit. To find, as it was mentioned many times yesterday, what's the balance that's needed? The balance between industry, risk assessments, food safety, animal welfare, and everything else. And this leads me to my first question that I would actually like to pose to industry. And I think I would like to, who would I like to ask this question to? Yes. I'd like to ask it to you, Agnieszka, is, in the essence of collaboration and moving forward, how could data sharing by the industry be streamlined to boost further innovation in these fields and enable more transparent risk assessments and authorization processes?
Yeah, so we have a few hours, right? This is a great question, for which probably I do not have a one-fit-all answer, unfortunately. I did, in our company, we also came across problems with data being absent. For example, we wanted to build a model to assess our risk in upscaling, right? What risks can we envision in the upscaling of our processes? In downstream processing, so that we can ensure that the product is clear. That data exists in many of the companies internally, does not exist outside beyond a few papers from some universities that dared to upscale and publish, right? This is a big bottleneck because that comes to the point where every single company that exists in this field has their own standards internally developed because they had to, has their own data and their own processes. And if you're a new player, you don't have access to it. You have to reinvent the wheel again. We discussed with the new omics field, right? That's just tons of data generated every day. But highly not, like it's not standardized, and every company will have their own standards that they will introduce. Some of them might be extremely similar because there's, finite numbers of how you can format your Excel tables. However, they still won't be compatible with each other. So there is currently a big movement from the FAIR offices, from the FAIR organization on the data sharing. And that means that we don't have to reveal our company secrets, but we can share anonymized data on things that are key aspects of risks, right? So if we measure risks, we measure certain aspects of growth, toxicity, compounds that are the key ones to actually be measured. It doesn't matter what product that you made or what is your secret sauce in the company that you use to make it, but you can share some anonymized data to try to help the community as a whole and also yourself. And if we have these standards, but that has to be developed, and I'm afraid here we need to sit down again across different industries, universities, because they also produce data these days, on upscaling, also on industry aspects, because we collaborate a lot with universities as well, and regulatories, because we also need to know what they need. Because it's also part, like if there's something that we'll be including in our dossiers, there should be standards as well, like what it is that helps you make the decision whether this is safe or not. It's not about giving you terabytes of data that you have to spend 5 years analyzing. It's about giving you the right answer so that you can say yes or no to is it a risk or not. And I think that is just a very much open discussion that we still need to have a sit down work group on and really develop.
So further collaboration, and it's about what data, sharing the data and streamlining it. And you mentioned that universities produce a lot of data. Well, we should hope they do, right? So Kevin, have you got anything to add to that question or answer it in a different way? What's your views?
I completely agree with what Agnieszka said. It would be incredibly important for companies who are doing safety tests to share not their secrets, but the way they do their safety assessments. That would be extremely valuable for all of us, right? I mean, sure, I think everybody's thinking, it would be wonderful to know how company X and Y tested for allergenicity or stability. How did they do it? I wonder, and it's almost bouncing back the question to people from industry, people in the audience, would you be open to this? For example, if you would apply to EFSA to get approval, would you be okay with sharing not, of course, the company secrets, but at least the type of data, the type of tests you've done? Would that be an option? I don't know. But definitely that would be something very useful for us, because we're also, in my lab, developing things and thinking about safety, but it would be very useful to know what exactly we would need to show, right? And I think that's what we're all sort of hoping for, and that we're missing a bit. So that would be extremely useful.
And that's a very good point. So I'd like to expand this question then and hear from Valeria in answer to Kevin's question. What would you be open to sharing? And I'm wondering, what is it that's stopping you sharing now? What's holding back?
First, I need to understand how this goes on. Is it on?
They turn it on there for you.
So I definitely agree with Aga's point of collecting data, whether anonymized or not, depending on the type of data. That will be really key to advance. Altogether, the other point that I really agree with is to also have an input from the regulators, because out of caution, we might be testing for more things that are really needed and actually shifting the focus from less relevant points or more relevant points. So those feedback from the assessor will also be key, that we put the right amount of attention on the right elements. So that will also be key. In terms of sharing a potential EFSA dossier, that's kind of part of the process. So the transparency law will actually kind of because of that, the dossiers will be available, and there is a lot of learning. So we have seen now with the recent FDA memos that were published, there were a lot of lessons there learned and kind of flags that everybody can use to start to have an idea what to expect in an EFSA dossier. So totally agree with that.
Right. So is there anything else that is needed to help industry be more streamlined and share the data? What else?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, talk to us. I mean, dialogue and pre-submission consultations are really key. We have seen it as an industry and as individual companies in other geographies. Those pre-submission consultations are really gold. So it's really, really important, as I said, to put the focus where it needs to be. So, of course, we have to make our own assessment and decisions and analysis. That's clear. We just don't want to sit there and tell us what you want. No, it's a two-way discussion. But it's really important to arrive to a final dossier that will be also easier for the regulators to assess, because we already kind of got rid of the potential mistakes, things that are not relevant, things that we didn't need to do, and be also complete for the things that we might have not thought ourselves that we needed. So dialogue and pre-submissions consultations are really key for this.
Thank you. I think this is started off with a really good question because we haven't even got on to the next question, but we've got Romero, you wanted to add something to that, and then we'll come to Jette as well.
Yeah, so I'm obviously here as a representative of the university sector. And I think what's very interesting to see in this discussion, and Kevin's comment, I completely agree, is about the role that we are playing in this. I think we are playing catch-up right now from the academic sector, because the universities are basically trying to catch up with the innovation that's taking place in the private sector. The food innovation system has never been funded by government. Hence, universities haven't had the chance to develop much innovation, except for a few groups around the world that have initiated this process, and obviously they've gone private and developed their technologies that are now is falling through the cracks in terms of legislation, because there isn't one. Everything is secretive, it's not published, there's no open access to this information. So I think I would encourage academics to become a little bit more joined up in their activities. I think we have a precedent of this type of issue happening in other sectors. From my personal experience, I used to work in the embryo transfer society, which is a society of breeders that produced embryos for agricultural purposes. And a society was created to basically provide a framework of criteria globally for putting embryos between cows in Australia and America and in Europe. That was led from industry, but actually was catalyzed by the fact that scientists came with a framework that applied across the industry globally. I think there's an opportunity here for a lot of academics that are currently here, which represent different parts of Europe, different parts of the world perhaps, to start thinking that way, because we are all working in our little silos of projects in this area, but we are not really acting as a community. And I think we don't know each other. We haven't been, this industry emerged during the pandemic really, so we haven't even been able to travel around and meet. I think there's a good opportunity now to be able to, that we act as the, no gatekeepers, but we can gather this information in an organized fashion, anonymize it, and make it available to other stakeholders, perhaps like companies in Aga's situation, that we play a more active role in actually organizing the community for innovation, and that translates into benefits to the general industry, including the specific companies that are requiring specific data. I think we haven't seen that yet. And I think if there is an outcome for us from academia from this, is we need to get organized and actually start playing our part in organizing a lot of activities to promote the next generation of scientists, which companies require, and understand how this industry will work. So this is almost a pledge that we need to do something about this as academics, and hopefully come up with solutions to this type of questions, which are a bottleneck right now, because Valeria can make data available, but to whom? So that AGA can work on it. It has to be a more unified system that we can make this information available.
Thank you. So it's not just a case of making the data available, it's how you use the data, and also growing, I like that, growing the community, working together, so continuing the collaboration. And as you said, this is a new industry, so you've got the ideal, you're in the early stages, so you can actually grow it and influence it. Jette, you've got something to say about Javier, add something. He asked me very quickly, and then we'll come to you, Jette, and then we'll move on to the next question. And Andrea, maybe I shouldn't have started with this question. I'm joking. Javier, Jette, and then Andrea.
Just to complement Ramiro's answer, from an academic point of view, there is an increasing tendency to release all the raw data, because if you get right now, funding from public, national or European sources, I mean, there is no option. You have to make available all the raw data. So from an academic point of view, the situation is pretty clear. There is a pressure to release all the data which is funded with public money. So
right.
In our case, it's very simple.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Jette?
Yes, and I was actually elaborate on that one, because there's several EU projects and also national projects where we are obliged to share data, and having that data being in a uniform format so that it can be used by others is so critical. And these data sharing platforms should should be sort of made available for us as researchers to deliver our data into, because also sometimes when we have a research question, we will set up our experiments to answer that research question. But if we then upload the data onto a data sharing platform, then other researchers with other research questions can maybe, oh, right, I can use part of the data that this research group made with another focus, but then we just optimize the way we're using our data. And I think that could be really beneficial.
Thank you. I think, Andrea, you wanted to add something to this question?
Just to add that, I mean, as a regulator, we are part, of course, of a larger community. We do participate in activities, international activities with other. Data sharing has been the critical point also in this discussion. We have been talking with other geographies as well, including those that have been the first one authorizing this product. Public available data are also key to define guidelines for these products. Because at the moment, all the effort in regulatory science is towards identifying hazards, which is fine. But until we know the actual data, we cannot go to the next step and provide precise guidelines also to applicants. Of course, we all recognize there are barriers. I mean, it is a very highly innovative and competitive environment, with intellectual property being probably one of the barriers. But at some point, this should come either with the first dossier coming. Some of the geographies around the world don't really disclose the data we need. Others may do it, but probably database driven by academic in collaboration with industry would be key also to define clear guidelines for regulators and therefore provide a more certain framework for the assessment.
Thank you. And I think we're coming back to where we started. So one final point then from you, Agnieszka?
So just one extra thing. So why we currently can use the genomic data the way we can. It's standardized. There's a geodatabase. We have standard database, data formats. Everything is absolutely super standardized. Transcriptomics is already getting a bit iffy, but there's standards. There's databases where you can host your data. Metabolomics, there's one database that is showing up. It's metabolites, where you can upload your mass spec data. But there's very little on other aspects. And yes, I mean, I worked at university until end of last year, so I'm sort of academic still. I know we have to show our data, but that means that sometimes it's in an appendix in a PDF format. It is literally that, and then it's accepted. And then it's non-readable. No one can reuse it. No one can do anything about it. No one is going to, now put the numbers back into Excel file by hand to make it useful. So it's also about sometimes there has to be actually a bit more stringent also how data has to be made available, where we don't have proper databases yet for all the different data formats. That is a bottleneck because you cannot say you have to adhere to the standard if the standard doesn't exist or the database, but that's part of the FAIR principles where the data has to be reusable. And currently that has not been yet as a key requisite when we're sharing the data as scientists. And also pure data, you still need to add the metadata, and that sometimes is missing as well. So metadata is a key to be able to understand and do anything with that data. And sometimes also the scripts that you use to analyze and pre-process the data, and that is also not being shared. So the code sharing is another problem, because just having a data is not enough if you're like then analyzing and drawing conclusions afterwards. So there's different steps and actually quite a lot of complexity that has to be taken into account to enable proper data sharing.
Thank you. I was going to open up to the floor. Valeria, if you want one more point, because I think this topic seems to have, obviously, it's a really important one. So I'd like to actually open up to the audience to see if they have any further points or questions on this. But Valeria, please do go ahead.
A quick comment to what Andrea said. So to think about how we can actually facilitate this first dossier ending up on your table. So that's really something to think about, and how this dialogue could actually help to speed up this dossier coming up to you, and you starting to see more first-hand data on our products. Yeah.
Thank you. Right. So yes, we have the first-hand coming. No, yes, can you see? If you'd like to take the microphone. I could see a lot of nodding heads in the audience. That's why I thought I wanted to open up the floor already. So if you could say your name and if the question is directed at somebody or general.
Yes, Anna Hanschu, my name. I'm from Onigo Bio. We are VTT spin-off in precision fermentation. And actually I'm wondering, because we have hearing this all the time now, collaboration, and everyone says that's such a fruitful dialogue. But then it's always referred back to the transparency regulation that we cannot talk to each other anymore. So that was also literally told us. But if I look at the principles of the implementation for the transparency regulation, so this is to the Commission, here is literally written, full transparency will be ensured throughout the process. So I see no problem at all that we have this dialogue before we file our application.
Are you directing this to somebody in the panel, or
because this is also to the Commission, because I hear this all the time from all of us that we want to have this dialogue because it's a black box. That's what many of startups experience. I see a very constructive and interested EFSA, so I see actually no problem. And I'm wondering why this transparency regulation seems to be the main roadblock. And if I look at the document, I do not see why this should be a roadblock that we continue this conversation.
Okay, so I think there is somebody from the Commission in the audience. You don't need to answer that unless you feel like you really want to. No pressure there. But, or you'll answer? They're conferring. Okay. Yes? Yeah, can we just, and then they'll come, yeah. Okay, thank you very much. So if you'd like to introduce yourself, and then we'll come back to the panel as well.
Sorry, there's too much stuff here. So
okay.
My name is Rafael Perez, I'm working for the Commission. So I think we already discussed this issue yesterday, indeed in the context of transparency regulation. I think we are aware about the difficulties, where the companies are going through. But I think something that we have also an ongoing dialogue with EFSA on how to improve the situation. Okay.
Right, so in summary, yes, there was an issue, they've addressed it, well, they've recognized it, and now they're collaborating and working to address this. So hopefully that answers your question, that it's recognized, that it needs to be addressed, and they've started the communication on that. And I think, thank you very much for jumping in there, much appreciated. And I think, Andrea, you wanted to...
A very last comment specific to EFSA. I mean, collaboration is in the DNA of EFSA, with the agency, with stakeholders. Now, transparency has put some precise rules, but that does not hamper the collaboration effort we are doing. We have several technical groups that discuss specific matters. This field is very innovative, and as we said, has surfaced very recently. So we are building a path toward collaboration. This is one of those. But we do have a stakeholder engagement discussion also. We have stakeholder engagement groups in EFSA. I think it's critical, particularly for a very innovative field like this one, to have a mutual understanding of what we are talking about. And I've been participating, all our team and unit is going to conferences, discuss with scientists. There are regulatory requirements, those are mandated by law, and these we all respect. But there is also technical discussion which happen, as I've been seeing happen in breakout groups these days. And this will certainly cultivate, just to fancy word these days, to enhance more, our abilities to risk assess those products, your abilities to reply to the demand we have for the risk assessment. Of course, regulations are to be respected, there are rules for that, but there are ways. Yeah.
Thank you, Andrea. I think before we pass on to Kevin, I think the question from the audience was they appreciated with EFSA and industry, they can see the collaboration, but where's the European Commission in this collaboration and communication? And I think that's what the suggestion was. And the European Commission stood up. Thank you for that. Kevin, you want to add something? And then we've got another question from the audience.
Yeah, actually, I have more a question, right? So I'm a naive, stupid academic. So I've understood there is something like a transparency obligation on the EFSA side. But what I've also learned is that then I guess, certain parts of the file are blackened out, right? And that's logical because certain things are critical and the company doesn't want to share everything, so you get a very complex file with things missing, which doesn't maybe look so fantastic. So, and looks a bit suspicious, right? When you get the text and then all the crucial parts are blackened out. So, a question.
It's not blackened out for us.
Okay.
It's blackened out.
No, of course. Yeah, sure. That part I got. But this is about sharing, right? So I wonder, and this is for my understanding because I honestly don't know this. So, who decides what is visible, what is not visible? Can we standardize this? Would that be part of the solution also for the data sharing? I don't know how this happens. So I'm just curious to know how this happens.
Okay, so.
No, so what is blackened or not blackened starts by the applicant itself. So the applicant will make a confidentiality claim that is then assessed against the principles established on the transparency regulation and something that was developed further to that, which is called practical arrangements. Sometimes not that practical, but that's a different story. But the principle is something that is of that brings a commercial advantage to the applicant can be claimed confidential. Now, if that claim affects something that has a direct impact on the safety of the product, that claim would be rejected. And it's a discussion, so that's how it works. I actually asked the microphone because I really wanted to raise again the attention to the amount of services that we provide, that we have to applicants. There's a very fancy thing. I know EFSA's website is not easier, but try and Google it. That's what I do. And it's a catalog of services, and it includes several things. So, for example, what Andrea was talking about discussion groups, this is something that is done regularly in other areas. So, from the people here that we have here in EFSA, we run an industry group with GMO applicants where we don't discuss particular files, of course, but we discuss matters of common interest. And we find that group very useful because it's very important to understand that we don't ask things that can not be provided, but we also understand what can we ask that sometimes people are not aware. We have had one, for example, on the issue of allergenicity, trying to move on, and Javier has been the engine and brain, together with Antonio, of that group, and that group was extremely useful in putting forward some ideas. So this is something that we would actually take over as a sort of a point for reflection from this colloquium, how could be done, and especially in a novel area as such. It is very important that our stakeholders are registered. So if you're not, contact EFSA and register your association to that. There are certain standards. But what we can also do, even within the, so if, for example, European cellular agriculture is a registered stakeholder, nothing stops us in meetings to have individual companies coming and join as more representatives. It's quite flexible in a way. And I really like the discussion about data sharing because it's a very complicated discussion. Fair principles is something that everybody's been talking for a long time, but how do we do it? On the other hand, we do have certain standards, and a lot of the analytical aspects that were discussed yesterday, we have standards. There are standards. EFSA has an SSD catalog where we describe the tests. Toxicological studies have OECD standards, so there's a lot of things we could do if we agree that instead of sending the horror PDFs, I have a particular hate for those, we can make it. But the thing is where to start. And we can't be here talking, but we really need concrete actions. Decide, okay, this is the things that we need, it's more important. Let's work on data standards from them. Let's try and replace. Yeah, I'll go back home thinking about that. But
thank you, Anna. Thank you. And I think it is, you know, like it's where to start. It's taking those first few steps whenever you want to do something, can change something, can improve. You've got to take those first few steps, whatever you do. So I'd like to move on to another question. This is talking about applications. Andrea, this one is first for you, and then I'm going to ask industry the second part of the question. So, Andrea, has the EU received any applications on cell culture-derived foods and food ingredients? Andrea said he would answer. You can answer on his behalf or add to his answer. That's okay. Andrea, answer. Can you answer it?
I could answer what EFSA has received.
Okay, what has EFSA received?
Then colleague
And then we can
complement
see
what
if
is
you
coming
agree.
before EFSA. So,
Okay.
so far in this field, I mean, there are two different areas, clearly, which are the two pillars of this colloquium also. On the culture food side, we haven't received any application on culture food from animal origin. We had received one for plant origin, which is about to be finalized. On the precision fermentation, instead, as we know, this is not a new technology. So we saw this in some dossier in the past years. Very recently, and I'm talking about the last 3 years, we saw a huge increase of interest for example, human milk identical oligosaccharides through precision fermentation. And for those, we have finalized already about 15 applications, which most of them have been already authorized and are on the market there. So it's really two different macro areas, I would say. Clearly, the culture meat is possibly more complex, and that's why we haven't received any yet. As we know, there are some around the world, but not those many filed so far, despite the claim that they are authorized somewhere else. It's very little.
Okay.
I know we all understand from this discussion what the reason may be of this colloquium that we might have understood. On the other side, precision fermentation is really growing at a very high pace, and possibly will continue, or I expect that will increase. That's why we are also holding these dialogues.
Right. Thank you, Andrea. Before I ask the second part of the question to Valeria, Commission, people here, do you agree? Or anything you'd like to add?
Yes, I mean, we agree. There's nothing
That's
wrong
good.
to say about that. No, I mean, I think one of the issues, indeed, is that the Commission is always asking, to reply a number of parliamentary questions in the context of the culture meat. So far, we haven't received any in the context of culture meat, because there is a lot of campaign about, using the culture meat in a short future. But we don't have the moment. This is one of the reasons why we're organizing this, in particular, EFSA is organizing this colloquium, is about the lack of data. But I would like to come back just a bit, what the other point was about data sharing, is because in the context of novel food, this is a very innovative area where there's a lot of competitive issues, whether, our experience shows, that the companies do not want to share data. And in the context of application, which has to be submitted to the Commission, we receive a huge amount of requests for access to documents, whether competitors and other consulting companies would like to see the application from other companies as well. So this is in addition to the transparency regulation that eventually EFSA may decide which part of the dossier may be considered confidential and non-confidential. Because the Commission is handling the dossiers, we are subject to an access to document request by applicants, by third parties who would like to see dossiers as well.
Right, so it's like a safety net as well for the original companies and the startups. So it's so competitive because once it becomes in your hands, you're obliged to then share it to third parties. So it needs to be redacted before it gets to you. Yeah?
That's correct. And also, we have also provision in the context of what we call data protection, which means that the applicant may request data protection in the area of novel foods for some scientific document in support of an application. If they get the data protection subject to 3 conditions, the applicant may have the exclusivity of marketing the product for 5 years. And this is an additional element, for the applicant. It's a way to get something in return for the investment.
Okay. Thank you for that. So I'm going to go to the second part of the question, and this is for you, Valeria. What are the take-home messages for the EU from recent regulatory developments regarding cell culture-derived foods of animal origin in non-EU countries?
Yes. I would like to make a comment first. So today and yesterday as well, I hear a lot the word being competitive and competition. I like to disagree with that. Yes, it's true. There are secrets, there are patents, but we are very open to share. That's why we have a trade association with different companies that potentially could be competitors, but we are working together to make this industry successful. And that's definitely not the reason that a dossier, at least I speak for Mozambique, that has not been submitted to the European Commission. So transparency and the possibility that our data will be seen by our competitors is really not our main concern. So that I wanted to put that out there. To answer your
Can we that's really interesting, right? So throughout the value chain, they're protecting your data, but you're actually saying you openly share your data with other companies in your industry, supposedly because there is enough market out there. So while you've got your IP and the data that's commercially valued to you, the market is going to grow so much, there's enough market for everybody. So I think maybe not to discuss that further now, but it is something that should be considered, where the parties should get around the table and work out, well, they're saying they don't mind the data being shared. They want the data to be shared. So what is actually the obstacle to do that? So I think that's something for the parking lot to move forward and discuss and get the right people around the table. So thank you for sharing that. That's really good. So going back to the original question, what message do you have for the EU, for non-EU countries?
Yeah. I think I touched upon this already when I said that pre-submission consultation and dialogue is really key. So that was a big lesson learned from other geographies. So Wolfgang, for example, mentioned the starting point is the production process. So that will be something that could be starting to discuss and explain during pre-submission consultation. So those are being very helpful. And I'm going as far as suggesting that you could also visit us. So that's something that other regulators have been doing in a formal way, and it's just about us answering any questions you might have and improving your knowledge about the industry. So that's also a possibility.
Can I just clarify who's that invitation to? Who should be visiting you more? The EU, the Commission, the EFSA? Who is it? Who are you? Everybody?
Everybody. Everybody. We have for sure the main. I mean the first kind of gate that we will see is the EC, the European Commission. Like you rightly said, you will be the first one to see the dossier. So that will be really the first gate that we have to pass before the dossier can end up on your table and you can start building your knowledge on our products.
So your key message is open communication, come and visit us, get to know us better, and really understand what the assumed obstacles are there or perhaps aren't even there. That's your message to the EU.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think the process is clear to us. So what are the rules and the steps? So we have more question about the content of the dossier. So that's more maybe for EFSA to find maybe an additional tool in addition to the one you already have to answer more content-related questions. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Kevin, you have you got something to add to this? Because I could see you frowning, smiling.
Frowning, I guess. Again, a naive thought from an academic, but here's something I don't understand. Why do we have EFSA and the Commission involved? I genuinely do not understand this. Why does Europe put out EFSA? You put a bunch of experts, excellent experts at Parma, say, you guys, you're going to assess the safety. Then why is the Commission still involved? I do not understand this. it makes things complex, and I think it's one of the problems we have in Europe. It's added complexity. So maybe the Commission, if my body is sort of found floating up the Zenne River,
we know that your question wasn't welcomed. I'm not going to put anybody... Oh, yeah, we've got somebody who wants to answer that. Please do, yes.
Yes, good morning.
Good morning.
I'm Douglas Caleros. I also work for the Commission in the Novel Foods, and I think I would like to comment on your intervention. For a long, long time now, since 1998, and the mad cow disease, there is a separation between risk assessment and risk management. We are the risk managers in the Commission. EFSA is the risk assessor. So the Commission is involved in really receiving the application simply because it's the owner and manager of the regulation. It checks completeness part of the application, but then it goes to EFSA. If EFSA considers that the elements are there to allow for a risk assessment, then it goes into the risk assessment process. And the Commission doesn't interfere in that at all. What happens is the outcome, the output of the risk assessment is used by the Commission again to authorize or not authorize a novel food and the conditions by which, in our case, novel foods, in the colleagues in the GMO. So the Commission is really, in this case, being the owner of the regulation, the one that handles it before and after, but the two are separated. There is communication about what are our needs of the risk manager. There is communication from the risk assessors, what are the needs of risk assessor. But interference is probably too strong of a word in the process to use, because really the two are really, really separated. Okay?
Thank you for that. So I think it's different roles. That's why they do different tasks, different activities, different responsibilities. So it's not double work. That's good. Okay, so I'd like to move on to another question, actually. And this is more... Oh, is there another question in the audience? Oh, I couldn't see you back there. Sorry.
Hi, I'm Ida from Solar Foods, and I just wanted to ask a question.
Could you speak up a bit? The microphone is, we can't hear you that well.
Okay.
That's better, thank you.
Good. I'm Ida from Solar Foods, and I just wanted to ask the entire panel about a good point I think was made yesterday by Moes from the WHO. He talked about the fact that we mainly discuss risk assessment, but we do not discuss that much about suitability or benefits. And here I don't mean claims like health claims. I'm more talking about what does this product bring to the market, and what do you think about that as a panel? Is this something we should focus more on, and not just on discussing whether or not the food? Of course, the food needs to be safe. That's a self-given. But what about what can it bring to the market and the opportunities?
I have a question for you. Have you seen my questions? Because that's near enough the next question I was going to bring up.
Perfect.
So excellent. Okay. So actually, I'll let you answer that question. We had a question that was already put forward by, which I think is along the same lines. What technological developments in these areas can be expected in the near and far future towards addressing the social demands? So you've got two questions there. They're a little bit similar. I think I would like to start with Romero from the first part.
Yeah, so that's a very pertinent question. Why are we bothering with this industry? And clearly the people are involved have done their analysis. The demand for meat is increasing globally, and we cannot satisfy the demand with the current practices for meat production without destroying the planet. So there's a clear gap of demand and supply that is not being met today, and it will not be met in the next 20 years. So we have an urgent need to convert either the way we produce meat in a sustainable way in conventional farming practices, which is impossible to implement globally, but an ever-increasing demand, particularly from low and middle-income countries. I think Africa is going to be probably the place where a lot of this meat might end up, I guess, in the next 20 years, because they start eating a lot more meat. They want to eat, and many other countries. So I think there is an issue of supply and demand within the context of climate change. So it's converting the food system completely in the next 20 years to satisfy an increasing demand for high-value proteins which come from this type of product. So in my view, it's just a paradigm shift in how we produce this high valuable product that people want to consume. So in terms of technological advantages or developments that we need to expect in the next many years is to come up with procedures or methodologies to producing this meat that addresses all the questions that we're addressing here today in terms of risk assessment, but also at the end, that is a tasty product that people want to eat because they see it's properly sourced, it's sustainable, it's cheap, or it's affordable, and it fulfills your nutritional requirements. So I think we have it all in our hands now, and technology will drive, obviously, the demand will drive the technology to address all of these questions.
Thank you. I'd like to go over to both of our panelists from industry first. Jette, did you want to add something to that before we go over to industry? Please do.
Yes. I just want to say that I think the question that was asked, I think that's the very reason we're here. In my department, we've been applying to do this work for 10 years, and we have only got a project 3 years ago. So I think the very reason that we're here, that is because of the pressure from society on climate. So I think maybe we don't talk about it because it's a given. It's a task that we have to take on. So I don't think it's because it's silent. It's just because it's so overarching and so self-explanatory in some way.
Thank you. So Valeria, then, would you? Okay, you want to readdress that? Please do so.
I just have one question on the...
Wait, hang on, the microphone's not switched on. Okay, now.
Okay. Just a follow-up question, actually, also what Ida is saying, and actually your point, because now we discussed safety by design, but we're developing this product, so it's actually the moment to develop it sustainable by design. And this would mean that you think right now about where's the production, etc., where's the energy coming from. Actually, I'm interested, is there a discussion going on next to the risk assessment? What are the sustainability benefits and how can we systematically measure that? Just like a parallel discussion.
So we have lots of nods here from academia. I don't know if I noted. Who would like to address that? Are those discussions going on in parallel? Yep, Agnes? Agnieszka, sorry.
So my company is built on sustainability, that's our claim. So yes, for example, we do take the sustainability into account. So we do analysis of how much carbon would go into this, how much electricity goes into it, how much waste is produced, what do we do with the waste, and then try to compare it with the standards, So what would a cow make in this sense, for example, as a total, and then try to compare. Coming back to your question, I think it's also something that regulatory should look into, because to me, also as a consumer, I think it's about the fair choice. And I currently feel like we're just now labeling bio versus GMO, which is like super, safe grandma feel versus scary Frankenstein lab, right? While it doesn't tell you that the bio part produces so much carbon, so much nitrogen, spoils so much part of land, takes resources, water waste, etc., versus what could be your GMO scary part, but it saves the planet. And it saves your children in the future, that they have a planet to live on. It's about a fair labeling. It should always be about not just the risks, but it should also be part of like what the benefits does the product bring. So the sustainability could be part of the labeling, and we should also then treat fairly the traditional industries, that they should also put these things on their labels. How do they treat the environment? What is their impact? And then a consumer can really have a educated choice into what product would they go for, And I'm not saying there's going to be always people who go for the actual real steak, but that's fine, that's their choice, but only if they are informed properly and not just driven by fears. So I really love your comment, but I think it's not something that just the companies, because we look into this, we look into sustainability, also because it's lowering the costs. For us, it's cheaper to be sustainable than not be sustainable, It's everywhere. But it's also part on the consumer, if the consumer will accept our product in the end.
So just before we come over to Jette to add to that, from a perspective of a consumer, how can you work to ensure that when I go in to buy something, I pick it up and I can actually easily understand what I'm buying, right? Because as a consumer, you've got conventional, bio, GMO. You've got the packaging, you've got everything. So I think also you need to think of the consumers and how it can be easier for us as consumers to make that choice. You know, so in the labeling.
Well, I think we have now Nutri-Score. I know it's not perfect. I've heard the discussion on that side as well. But it's easy, right? You get a little sliders, few letters, colors. Basically, even children can understand. Green is nice, red is bad, right? In that case, or yellow or orange, whatever that other side is. Why not have like just the 3 sliders? Look into, you know, nutritional value slider, sustainability value slider. It doesn't have to be black and white. It can be a slider. We're sustainable green or whatever, or yellow, red, orange. And then also maybe on the technology, on the GMO versus bio, there you can also have that label added. And then you have like very easy to grasp metrics. And then you can choose, do you care about that sustainability or not? But it's at least there.
Right, so it's persuading the brands to take away their fancy labeling, to have those lots of sliders so we can make the right choice. So I think Romero wants to say something, but Jette, you've been waiting patiently. So Jette first, and then we'll come to Romero.
Yes, I'll make it short. So my comment would just be that the reason why is more the technical part that's represented up here is because is for EFSA, is for the safety. So that's sort of the technical knowledge that's been put at stake here. But I think it's maybe fair to say that most of our projects in this area do have like a working package that will address the LCA analysis, and it's always part of what we're doing. And the technical part is the one that has to deliver data so that the LCA analysis can be carried out. So a really close collaboration between these two types of sciences is completely essential, but it's definitely always present.
Thank you, Romero, and then I think there's one more point in the. I'll come back to you. Just let Romero, and then we'll come back to you. Thank you.
It's just a follow-on point from that comment that this could be a completely different workshop just on sustainability, because that's been addressed by a number of other people, and parts of these companies are working on that. But the issue with this is that it's not as simple as maybe Aga's putting it as a slider, because where do you start counting carbon footprint? And it's all down to the models that you apply, and this is a nightmare, really. So I think starting in that avenue is very, very good idea, but where do you start? And there are also already some models out there that have worked with this cost analysis and input analysis, and they're all as flawed as there are so many of them. So each one of them has a different parameter. So it's very, very difficult to put a carbon footprint to anything in this world. Where do you start? Yeah. So it's another challenge for another day, and let's leave it there for now. But clearly everyone is thinking about it, that is working in this industry for the precise reasons that we're all trying to make this sustainable.
So thank you for that. So it's a challenge, yet another challenge. It is being talked about in different forums, but you have something you'd like to add or another question?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Is the microphone on?
Is it on now? Good. I completely agree, and thank you for your points that everyone in the industry, including the company I'm working for, is of course into it. I'm just looking a bit more like the authorities from EFSA's side, from the Commission side, that you don't request this from us. There's nowhere where we can present towards us in a novel food application the suitability of our product or the need for it, demand for it from a consumer perspective. But we do these analyses, and we would like to show you so you can also see why it's important to have the product put forward. And that's a thing that I would like to discuss. Is it also a need from you to know why and how and all of the analysis that we're actually doing?
Right. Andrea, do you want to answer that?
Just a quick reaction. I mean, EFSA is an independent scientific body, answer mandate from the Commission The mandate on novel food is very clear. It's about the safety of the product and whether it is nutritionally disadvantageous or not if it replaces another food. Of course, but I'm not the regulator nor the expert on this. There are discussions in the Farm to Fork strategy discussion going toward embedding sustainability element into risk assessment, but that's not there yet to my knowledge. So for the moment, a dossier submitted to EFSA will only need to contain safety and nutritional assessment.
Thank you. So moving on to another question. Javier, you've been a little bit quiet, so I've got a question for you now. Sorry? Oh, yes, certainly. We don't want to stop the Commission talking.
Takis Askaleros from the Commission. Address to your question a little bit, because I understand your predicament, and of course, when it comes to innovation of the types of things that we're taking today, in particular cultured, engineered type of cell factory produced food, it's obviously that you move into a next step of what society expects and what are the quote-unquote benefits that this will offer versus conventional, traditional things. The issue here, and it's something that we have to live now, and I don't know for how long, of course, because these are very valid points you're raising about sustainability, scoring, what have you, is the fact that, as Andrea mentioned, practically all, with the exception of the medicines regulation, all safety-driven regulations in the EU address only that question. Is it or is it not safe? Therefore, neither EFSA nor us can ask and go beyond that what the legal basis or the legal framework allows us to do. In the medicines, it works, but then the benefit is not so much sustainability, but it's benefit to the patient if the risks are high. In food safety, this is not the case. But I think you're raising a good point. We come back to what you mentioned about how do you measure sustainability. I have an even more upstream question, how do you define sustainability? But that's another probably discussion. But you're right, there may be elements here, but these are more societal-driven elements that need to be somehow framed, either at European level or national level, to allow a head-to-head comparison between something new, innovative versus traditional, and therefore you, us, all of us can make informed choices. Unfortunately, for the moment, it is not possible to be done in the European context because, like I said, safety is the driver. How we move in the future, obviously, there are other colleagues in the Commission. We'll take back your message about the need to have the Slido thing. It's a very enticing idea, provided you have the different things. But we'll take the message back to them. The message from us now is, at least when it comes to this kind of context, novel food GMOs, is really safety-driven and not benefit-driven, societal or otherwise. Now,
sorry.
You allow me one more
Yes,
comment.
certainly.
In terms of discussing with the Commission, a lot of companies say, yeah, we want to discuss things. Our plea to the companies or those who want to discuss with the Commission is, please provide us, and we know, we understand the competitive confidentiality, data protection elements. We should not undermine the fact that this is a highly competitive field, and therefore, although you may be sharing data, when it comes to publicly sharing data after the authorization, it's another story. The vast majority of authorizations in novel food are data protected, which means the applicant has 5-year exclusivity. Why? To protect their investments. It's logical. So, but this comes to opposites, of course, with the fact about data sharing and speaking. Anyways, the plea comes, therefore, if you are to approach us, we get a lot of questions which are spotty questions. Can I use this? Can I do this? Without having the complete picture. It is impossible to answer those questions. And therefore, the answer you will get is, unless we have a very detailed information, tantamount to an application or even before that, we cannot answer those questions. Because if we answer a spotty question, then this is given as an official position of the Commission to you, possibly rightly so. But then when you see the final picture, that may not be true anymore.
Okay, good.
No,
thank you for that. So,
one follow-up question. I'm really curious because this is a discussion.
yeah, the microphone's not on.
Sorry. Just one question, because to which degree can we align this process with what's going on? It will affect all of us, speaking about sustainability labeling. We need to have this conversation in parallel, because we will need to comply to that too. But I see two separate discussions, which doesn't make sense, because while we're developing the products, we are already doing anticipatory LCAs. Yes. We see the huge wins on land use, on water use. Europe is in a water crisis. Look to Italy, well, etc. I don't need to explain that. So I really miss this integrated approach. The Commission is constantly talking about biodiversity and a climate crisis, but how do we translate this and work on this together?
I think if we just do, we'll just do
very,
one
very
question.
And can you hear me? Because people accuse me of having a very loud voice.
Before you start, though, what I'd like to just say, we're here to talk food safety, so please do answer. We'd like to get back to the food safety and the risk assessment. It's very valid. We've all said it needs to be done. It's been done in other areas. So please answer, and then we'll move on. Thank you. Thank you.
Can you hear me? Because usually I tone down because people tell me I have a very loud voice. Anyways, point taken. We've taken the message that needs to be aligned, and we'll take the message back. We are not the ones working on this, but we'll convey the message, okay? Thank you.
Thank you. And I think that's the key, right? Is taking the message back and the communication and taking it to the right people. So we have one more question from the audience. Emelos?
Actually, it's not a question, it's just to add up to this discussion. Indeed, as it was mentioned before, we assess the safety of these products, but in parallel, EFSA is working on establishing a methodological framework which integrates the assessment, the simultaneous assessment of risks and benefits. And actually, currently, we are updating this guidance that will allow people to conduct integrated assessments of risks and benefits. And also, EFSA is funding external scientific projects which try to integrate risk-benefit assessment and sustainability aspects. So there is an ongoing work that could, in the future, address the question you made.
So it's starting. You're starting to have that from a communication, a process point of view. Thank you for that. Actually, this leads me on to another question for EFSA. Andrea, this one is for you. I'm going to come back to your question, though. So, because I think this one leads on, are there any perspectives to update EFSA guidance documents in relation to cell culture, derived foods and food ingredients derived from precision fermentation?
The answer is yes. We have been doing, we do update our risk assessment continuously. Precision fermentation was one of the cases. We have several EFSA guidance documents which are applicable to the novel food area. Let me start with novel foods is very heterogeneous. So cultured meat is one, but we have several other food categories. We go from engineered nanomaterials all the way to microbes, all the way to insect, and to any plant extract. So we do have a general guidance which address all these categories, but we do refer a lot to cross-cutting or sectorial guidances which are developed by EFSA. To name one, the nanomaterial or the GMM, which impact most of you. This is a guidance which is not yet embedded in our own novel food guidance, but it has been used for our risk assessment for the past 3-4 years. Now, we will formally update the guidance. That's a process that started. Most likely we will try to go for a public consultation toward the end of this year. That will address also culture cell meat and culture food of a plant origin, same as precision fermentation. We are doing different preparedness activities. We have been starting this already quite long ago in terms of internal preparedness. This colloquium is part of that. The outcome of this colloquium will feed our revision of the guidance and update, not only revision. We are adding new features to the guidance. We are aiming to get somewhere with the final document at the beginning of next year. But we also discussing more flexible ways of keeping our guidance updated, because we do, by mandate, we need to revise our guidance routinely. But indeed, there are areas like this one which emerge suddenly, needs a fast response, and therefore, as other geographies, as we call it, are doing, we are also considering having quicker update that they may result in then in a more general update of the guidances. Anyhow, all what has been discussed here will be covered by the next update of the guidance, including all the development in the science that we are doing. So.
Thank you. So I think it's, yes, there is, and also not only will it be updated, but also how to be more proactive than reactive. So how to do some updates quicker because of what's happening. So that's, thank you. Yeah, sorry, yes. Can we have a microphone here as well, please? Thank you.
No, I just wanted to agree with what Andrea said, but also reinforce the message that was also given by our colleague in the European Commission, that there is a novel food guidance, there is that we think it is, that we know is suitable for the assessment of these products. There is a need to have certain flexibility, and therefore the process that is in EFSA is that we ask for additional data when we think it's necessary. So this colloquium has been extremely useful for EFSA to understand the issues, to understand the processes, but also to understand what kind of data we would be able to ask, as it's been, I hope, for the industry, but for everybody, because there's many other people in this group beyond the few possible applicants, also other regulatory agencies, member state authorities, that have now a better understanding, and this could help us in guiding those questions and making it better. A guidance, I think this is a sentence that one of my colleagues used, should never be a cookbook, because this is extremely complex, in particular in the area of novel food. As it was explained, and Bruno Gautret made a very nice presentation of all the categories, we deal with a huge variety. If we make a cookbook, we will quickly run into a cookbook that is not enough. So I think we also need to have that kind of flexibility, and therefore we need to engage more with our applicants and with our partners to make sure we cover all the others. But I really want to make it clear that the regulation is very clear. Is the novel food regulation, and the guidance that we have for the scientific risk assessment already exists, is applicable. We can work with it. So it's not like we are here like, oh, we don't know what we're going to do next. We do know what we're going to do next. There are stages of adjustment. And again, just to reinforce, the role of EFSA is on safety. Sustainability, for the moment, we're waiting for a framework on sustainability that would allow to develop that field. But it's a very complicated discussion, scientifically and regulatory. So just to kind of close the subject.
Thank you. I think we've got one question from the audience, if you'd like to stand and...
Yes, so I'm Kengi from Ajinomoto. So, from yesterday's breakout discussions and this morning's sharing about, what were the issues for risk assessment, my impression was that, yes, we identified a lot of the challenges, but we still have to identify how to address some of these. I mean, for example, this morning we brought up like growth factors. It's something that to my impression, wasn't something that was fully clarified. There were other things like immunogenicity that came up yesterday in our discussions in my breakout group. But how do we deal with this? And the question would then be, is there a platform where we can further discuss, because we need to tackle these very specific technical issues? And to my mind, there is a platform available. Unfortunately, so the platform I'm referring to is ILSI. It's a scientific organization which is supported by industry, of course, but it's a tripartite organization that has in the past helped to support a lot of these risk assessment issues. I think a lot of the, for example, TDC is something which ILSI was part of, organized scientists from tripartite governments, industry, and academia to sit together to tackle these issues. And I think we have an opportunity here, or a need here, to tackle this issue in the same way. Of course, recently, ILSI hasn't been so active on these topics, but in terms of risk assessment specifically, it's something which is very much needed to deal with in terms of the cell-cultured meat as well as the precision information. So it was just a comment, and I will declare my interest that I do sit on the Scientific Advisory Committee of ILSI Europe. But this is a topic I think that would be suitable for an organization like that. Unfortunately, Isabel, who's the executive director of ILSI Europe, was supposed to come, but she wasn't able to make it. But I think in general, even if it's not ILSI, there has to be a platform to discuss this in more technical detail.
Right. So I'll just I'll break that question down into two parts. So there was lots of discussions yesterday in the breakout, and the summary today was just very top level what those discussions were. But you felt there was challenges. This is what needs to be addressed, but not how it's going to be addressed. And when we were preparing for that yesterday, actually, that's what we came up with. We have, obviously, this was just a taster. This was just a few points. There's going to be a lot of work done afterwards with this data, and I'll pass that over. Who wants to answer? How do you move on from here? Everything that's come out of the breakout groups, what are you going to do that? What's the next steps? What are you going to do with all this discussion and all these findings and turning the challenges into opportunities and actions? Javier, yes.
Thank you. I mean, I agree with the audience because indeed yesterday we have very fruitful exercise just to highlight some issues, and for sure further discussion is needed. So I think that the best option is, as you suggested, just to create some kind of platform just to promote the interaction among all stakeholders. So that's for sure, that should be a priority, yeah. But that means a general question, so we have so many issues just to tackle from a specific angle. So.
Anybody else want to try and add anything to that question of what's the next steps after today and how to, what you're going to, how you're going to take this information and apply it? Okay. So. Thank you, Anna.
Caroline, this is more or less what I was supposed to do on the wrap-up, so we gain 5 minutes for coffee, I guess. No, I mean, the simple administrative question is that after these events, we will take all our notes together. Everything that my excellent colleagues tried to summarize in 10 minutes is 4 hours discussion, with a lot of preparatory work before. So again, my very big thank you to everybody who participated. So we will have to put all of that into what we call an event report, and this is quite a standard process. The colleagues from Prospects were also helping us with this, so give us a little bit of time. May and June is really a busy period, but we'll do our best. We will have this event report. Some of you will probably be contacted. I'm talking about the people that collaborated with us to make sure that everything is transcribed. And within that report, we'd also try to have some recommendations, some ideas for the future. And I think we had a few good ones. The continuation of this engagement, some considerations on sharing of data, links with other institutions and organizations that could support. These are all things that just came out of the top of my mind, but I guess it came from you as well. And so this is really the administrative step. Then we have to start thinking, okay, from those, what are things that we can concretely put forward? Myself and Andrea yesterday in front of a beer already had a few ideas, but I think we deserve a bit more of time and reflection to see how we progress. In this discussion, we'll also, of course, involve the colleagues in the Commission, because for future applications, they are the ones receiving the application, so they will also be involved in this preparation. And I think this is the immediate next steps. Do we going to come out with the guidance? Andrea explained that this is a continuous process that will continue. But I think the main key message is that events such as this are important, maybe not such in a fancy way and beautifully organized, but a bit more, well, simpler to organize, let's put it this way. That's definitely something we will have to do. And we're really looking forward to see this first dossier. I think there's a lot of activity, and I just wanted to make a remark. I'm talking here, and there's an upcoming conference in Finland. I think Nina is involved on that. That will be a very nice forum to discuss some of these scientific matters, and we'll be There will be EFSA colleagues in there as well following that conference. So another forum for discussion. And I'm taking on what Ramiro and Kevin were saying about the academic role on this process, on something so innovative. We'll try and get the pieces together and be together. Industry has its own organizations, its own way of putting forward, and we're very open to follow those developments. I think this is, if you allow me, how much we can go for the moment in terms of more practical.
Yeah, thank you. We've got 1 minute left, so I was going to ask if there was any last question from the audience. There's a microphone right behind you. That's it. Thank you.
And can you also add money in your system? Because imagine the scenario: startup wants to do something big, don't want to become millionaire in the first place, but really help the society with the novel food, which really make changes. We will get our first pre-seed, which is 500,000, let's say. How we will manage to do the novel foods and the risk assessment. We have been scraping behind the ministry doors, Ministry of Economics, Ministry of Rural Affairs, Ministry of Environmental in our country to really help us. They can give us a little bit, for consultancy, for payment, but nobody wants to finance our risk assessment. Can it be there is some system that the EFSA will support, and then we will give this information out for you internal use, so it will protect our business, but then really you can learn from it, and we will be able to do our risk assessment. Sorry, maybe too big thing, but...
No, the simple answer is no. Okay, so we cannot finance a particular company to prepare a dossier. That would be completely against the principles that are established. What you also need to recall is that on the contrary of many other products which go for pre-authorization, there are no fees for food products. So this is totally financed. All of us, my salary, Andrea, and everybody else, is financed by European citizen tax money. So there is no fees. We cannot finance, obviously, anything like that. There are certain considerations about small and medium enterprises that are embedded in the transparency regulation, precisely with the objective to support small, medium enterprises to get into the market. And you would allow me that I would have to consult better on what would be the differences. So that would be the straight answer.
Okay. Oh, Andrea, very quickly.
Follow up and practical issue. The colleagues in the front desk in EFSA have a specific program for small, medium enterprises to allow them to get an easier access to an application process. So they really work hand in hand with small, medium enterprises that ask for the service and do that. There are plenty of services they can do. For small, medium enterprises, that's a very dedicated service which has been working for the past 2 years quite well. Of course, we cannot put money into that, but we can walk you through all the requirements and more than for other areas, more than for other industries.
All right, so we have run a few minutes over, but I think we've gained a few minutes because Anna's done a wrap-up, so thank you. But first of all, I would like a round of applause for our panelists. So thank you very much. And also, I'd like to have a round of applause for yourself because you were so interactive, you posed so many good questions. We didn't need all the predefined questions, so we didn't get to ask them all. So thank you very much for your interaction and for your... Thank you. And now I'm handing over to Hella. I think they said they couldn't swap this over, so you need to... Okay. Thank you.
I think you are allowed to leave the floor. Thank you very much. Boy, what a discussion. I think this was fun. Thanks a lot. Now, we are moving over to wrapping up, and I'm calling Wolfgang Gebmann to come to the floor. Wolfgang is the overall rapporteur from this not a workshop, it's a colloquium. As you heard already, Anna informed you it will be a report from this. But before that, you are supposed to give just a short wrap-up of what has been going on over the 2 last days. So thanks a lot for doing this, Wolfgang.
Thanks for you for sharing. Yeah, I was supposed to give a 15 minutes wrap-up, but I don't want to bother you that long. And I don't know which will break first down, my voice or the accu of my old laptop. I've made some notes from the presentation yesterday and from the breakout sessions and the discussions we had. We first got a quite good introduction from the international perspective. We heard that some of the cell culture-derived foods that some of the cell culture-derived foods have been already authorized in other countries, which were faster than Europe, let's say, or where industry got support, more support, quicker support, specific support from industry. Okay, now my laptop has the screen. Then we heard very interesting presentation from Masami Takeuchi from FAO, Food and Agriculture Organization, who also indicated how member states are supported in the way on the way to regulate and to assess such type of products. Yeah? Then we heard a very detailed introduction from Eurobio and sorry, I need to switch this off. And from the industry, who gave a very good introduction to the development of new products and the production process as such, who also indicated the areas of potential concerns where hazards should be identified. And then we had the breakout session, and to raise a few issues there was discussed about horizontal gene transfer, about antimicrobial resistance, which is not totally new as compared to other foods and food production. Generally, my impression was also that when it comes to cell culture-derived foods, all the elements we are considering there have been already considered in other applications. Not at this specific combination, but allergenicity, comparator to its conventional counterpart, toxicology, production process, the use of certain components which could be of concerns. All these are elements that are assessed in all other novel foods as well. Not in this combination. It's a new type of product, these cell culture-derived foods. But I don't think that we need to invent the wheel. I don't think that there is something very particular new, apart from the food as such. I also want to thank the people for keeping the focus, because EFSA is fully aware that there are more issues than safety and nutritional profile and its effect to the European consumers. But I want to thank you for keeping the focus on these items. We heard later sustainability, consumer expectations, huge challenges for the industry. We absolutely acknowledge it's certainly a challenging technology to get the cells grow, to get some yields that you need to market, the texture, the tastes. I don't admire industry. The challenges are huge. But even more, I want to thank also the participants from this sector for keeping the focus on the items which are of more interest for EFSA, which again is safety and the nutritional assessment. Finally, I want to thank the overall chair, Helle Knudsen, for accepting the task on top of all her other tasks she's doing for EFSA, but also for a national institution. Same for the other chairs for the breakout sessions. And finally, I would like to ask the audience what you think, what we could have done better for the next scientific colloquiums. Can be the program as such, the topics, you want more flexibility maybe, or what are the elements we could consider for the next scientific colloquium, if you have. If not, then only thank you. some comments, some suggestions what we could do better for the next one? Oh, it was perfect. Perfectly organized, certainly, yes. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Maybe ladies first, behind, and then. Okay. Okay. There was another comment. Ah, sorry. You also? Ah, okay. Be prepared for the next time.
Basically, I would say it shouldn't stop here. So it's not so much that this wasn't good. You can always improve things, but to my belief, it was very open. It just shouldn't stop here. We just should continue the dialogue on this.
Okay. Hans?
Yes, I think it was a very good meeting and I really enjoyed it. If you want one advice for, let's say, some extras, use tools like Mentimeter, etc. Because I have the impression that some of the aspects, there's quite a general agreement or maybe general agreement that we should pursue it. And of course, I alluded to the omission of the standard tox battery, etc. If everybody agrees to it, this is something to be minuted in the final report. And that is what you really can achieve by using such tools. So.
Okay, the report is just, the purpose of the report is to report about the discussion. And,
yeah,
and
I know.
It cannot be never such a binding thing. And also, you know perfectly well, every application is different. And we cannot clear a priori that you don't need this and this and this study. At the end, it depends on the use of components in all the products, whether this, yes or no, trigger some requirements. Yeah.
I fully agree and appreciate, yes, of course.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, so I think as already someone mentioned, but like, and I think the reflection is very important. So when we have this kind of stuff, so like when we do this, like we are really concentrating on this and we're really enthusiastic. But after that, like we tended to forget. So what we discussed and whether this has really influenced something or not, so no one knows. And of course, it's really hard to really point out whether this conversation really has created some really specific results. So it's really difficult to say because other kind of elements will affect every kind of policy or something. But I think, maybe this summarize or like minutes will be disclosed, but maybe at some point on, kind of reflection and if, some kind of conversation would affect your policy or your practice, maybe this would be disclosed or at least communicated with not only the people here, but more public. If so, I think people more and more interested and have a concern. So this kind of stuff on a conversation really has an impact. So otherwise, just a gathering or, of course, if the objective is like inspire someone, that's nice. But I don't think like this is for this. So. Yeah, I think this kind of reflection is more important, than just a conversation. So I'm sure you will do this, but I think this is very important, yeah.
Like for all scientific colloquiums, there will be a report that will be published. Yeah. It was also extremely useful for EFSA staff to have this exchange with industry. Now we know your issues, your problems, which then we, in a coming update, we can also be more specific in the guidance to better guide on certain issues. Yeah? And also we are better prepared now, I think, than we may have been, let's say, some months ago. Yeah? It was also very useful for EFSA, I must admit. Andrea, you wanted to remind? Okay. Any further comment what we could do better or negative feedback or positive feedback?
No, I can only give positive, right? No, it's so for me, what I hear, there's a little bit of sentiment about actionable points. From this, I really enjoyed the discussions yesterday I had with many of the different people. I've learned so much also from EFSA on what your problems are and how we as industry can help you. I mean, and now I'm missing the point of how can we help each other in the future? Because if this event happened once every 5 years, well, I might not be in the business anymore, right? But even if I am, it's losing the momentum, it's losing the platform of this actually shared communication and learning from each other and trying to make this process better for both or three sides, because of course we should include academia as well in this discussion. So we've been talking about collaborations, but there's no actions and there's no responsibility of who is going to do that. In industry, we usually don't have a lot of time to also then, on top of that, make a European consortium and run it. So perhaps help us to make this into actions that we can actually stay connected and help each other further.
I mean, it definitely will not take 5 years because, as Andrea highlighted already, we have started to work on an updated guidance document, which normally, and also in this case, we will subject it to public consultation, not only via web, but also to meet with stakeholders in physical form, maybe Brussels, maybe somewhere else, we have not decided yet. But that will be the next occasion to exchange on the requirements and to discuss on the update on the specific requirements, and then certainly also questions from particular specific parts of the industry can be also discussed in coffee breaks, during the sessions, and so on. So there will be a kind of follow-up with the things we have learned now. They will have an impact on the updated guidance. And hopefully you have also all time then when we discuss the draft guidance, where we seek all your input then.
Sorry, just had a comment. So, it's okay for me to speak. So I just had a comment because with regards to public consultations for draft guidances, I guess, from the industry's perspective, it's of course very good that we can comment, but sometimes it's a black box until we have that chance to see the document. But a lot of the times those issues in the documents itself probably could have been discussed, because a lot of these are scientific risk assessment questions. So I think, to the point that I was making earlier, there probably needs to be a platform to discuss the scientific topics that both of us, everybody in this room probably has the same question. We're trying to figure out how to answer them. But then if it's a process where we can only have to look at the draft guidance when it's already formed in a certain way, we don't have input to that at the early stages, where these questions probably are more relevant to be discussed at the early stage rather than when it's in writing, and sometimes you argue about the way it's written or wording, the minutiae, which then you don't hit the right points in terms of the science. So that's my comment on the need for a platform before even EFSA were to finalize, draft guidances.
I mean, from my experience, also draft guidance, they have changed significantly from the input, not only what we have received from the public consultation via internet, but also from the stakeholder meetings. I don't know, you may prefer it even one stage earlier, but I don't think that we can do that. Yeah. Because normally when we do draft guidance, we will consult on this draft guidance, physical meeting, at least 8 weeks, public consultation, and later on we again, then it's finalized, then we have usually another meeting then.
Yeah, I agree there are also steps before, but definitely there are sometimes it's stakeholder meetings, but who are the stakeholders who are involved? Sometimes there are limitations. For example, for industry, I have to join a particular, trade association or something like that, and then we can have dialogue with EFSA. But sometimes, depending on the site, companies in this field right now, a lot of them are very small, very heterogeneous sizes of companies, and in trade associations, there may be bigger players who then have a louder voice and smaller companies who have a smaller voice, but then there's no platform where everybody has a say, in the sense where if it's what I'm trying to say is that too formalized kind of dialogue, and I understand there are limitations as well, legally speaking, but definitely if there are other platforms available where the science can be discussed a bit more freely before putting things into writing in draft guidances, that definitely would be helpful. On top of what, of course, already exists.
I think today was such a kind of meeting, but I don't think I can respond any more than what we said before. Thank you very much. But heard, the point was heard. Yeah. Maybe last comment, if no, last comment now, and then I give say two comments, and then Helle. Okay.
Is this on? Can you hear me? Okay, I'm Beth Lobrand from Supermeat in Israel, but for today also from Cellular Agriculture Europe. We're very well represented here, and I came without expectations, having worked for many years with and around EFSA, and I'm very pleased. And we as a trade group and an organization are extremely pleased also to be able to participate. And we just want to say that we want to collaborate, we are open, and I think that we can have a greater impact as a group rather than individual companies trying to make their way. So that we would like to contribute, and we're very happy to listen. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Last comment?
I don't know if it's good to be the last comment, because I want to say the same thing as Beth just mentioned. It's really a pleasure to join this dialogue. It's really useful. It's my first time joining a Scientific Colloquium. I also like the way that we have the breakout session and have the survey in advance. Actually, my only point is that for the survey, which we have the 5 main points, and we can answer to those. There were some topics could be inside inventory, but as a feedback from industry, and can be related to multiple sections, or can be a more general comments. So maybe could there be another more general box that we can enter something?
Good point. Yeah. Good point. Thank you. Very practical point. Yeah. Thank you, Helle. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Wolfgang, for summing up briefly, and it was good to have this exchange of ideas in the end on how to improve and how to continue this communication. I just want to thank the audience, and then I will hand the floor over to Anna to wrap up. If you have something to add, you have 4 minutes. I will cover it for you.
I love this. I really like it.
I always be like this.
It's a struggle of my life. No, I have nothing else to say, so thank you very much. Just a practical thing. There are sandwiches, kind of takeaway lunch in the restaurant over there. And, well, have a safe trip back. I hope you don't get wet, not too much. And I'll hope to see you all very soon again. So please keep in contact. If you have any additional questions, you can always direct it to us. We will also send sort of a feedback survey. So if you felt shy about telling us all the mean things, we only heard good things. I'm sure it's not like that. So just put them on the feedback survey. We really want to improve. And Lucia, did I forget something? Ah, yes. Thank you. If any of you needs a certificate of attendance, please contact EFSA Organizing Committee. You have the email address, and we'll make sure we get this to you as soon as possible. So